Good morning all. Our speaker had joined. So let's start the program for today. A very pleasant good morning to all of you and welcome to 5 days faculty development program on advanced mathematical techniques in engineering and technology organized by Department of Mathematics Maharshi Dhanand University Rohtak, sponsored by AICTE Academy, Atal Academy. I, Dr. Seema Mehra, Organizing Secretary of this FDP on behalf of Department of Mathematics, welcomes you all present here. Now I would like to request Professor Rajiv Kumar, Coordinator of FDP, on the board to welcome our eminent speaker, Professor Manu Pratap Singh. Over to you, sir.
Yes. Very good morning to each and everyone on this second day of this FDP. I also greet our esteemed speaker of the day, Professor Manu Pratap ji. I'm audible, sir?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Good morning
Thank you so much.
All of you.
Good morning. Good morning, sir. Good morning. So very good morning to all of you. Today is the second day of this our FDP, sir. Yesterday only we have inauguration and there were 3 sessions, technical sessions. Today also we have 3 technical sessions. In the first session, Professor Manu Pratap ji is going to speak on implementation of quantum neutral networks for pattern classification. Whereas in the second session, we start from 12 p.m. Till noon. That will be a speaker will be Varun Upadhyay and stream, and he is going to speak on health and happiness. And in the last session, software reliability growth models and its application will be taken up by Professor Nisar Ahmed. So in the first session, I welcome Professor Manu Pratap ji. He is a man of computer science, belongs to Department of Computer Science, Institute of Engineering and Technology, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University. Professor Manu Pratap ji is working there since 2014 and he has a teaching and research experience of about 20 years. More than 90 research papers is published in the Journal of International and National Reputes, that is in his credit. He has been recognized widely around the world in the form of citation of the research papers and also been awarded a prestigious award, Young Scientist Award in Computer Science by the International Academy of Physical Sciences in 2015. He has guided more than 18 students for a doctorate degree in the area of computer science. He is also referee of many various international and national journals. Specifically, he has developed feed-forward neural network simulators for handwritten characters recognition of English alphabets and a hybrid evolutionary algorithm for handwritten character recognition of English as well as Hindi classification. His area of interest is neural network, pattern recognitions, machine learning, soft computing, quantum computing, and is a member of various technical, academic and research committees. Google citation for him credit to his is H14 and I-index is 10 and more than 434 citations, and he has been a speaker and keynote speaker as well as the invited speaker in many institutions, conferences in India and abroad. I heartily welcome you, sir, on this session, and I hope with your deliberations, our participants who are from 26 states and UT of India, they will be benefited. So we are thankful to you, giving your precious time for our the participant.
Thank you,
sir. Welcome to the board.
So
and now, please take up the deliberations, discussions with the students. Thank you very much, sir.
So thank you very much for inviting me, especially the MD University Rohtak and the entire team of the University of Rohtak for organizing this event. And this is a very wonderful FDP as I was reading the schedule. And you have covered so many topics in the FDP. This is very wonderful. And I congratulate all the entire team of the MDU for many such input conference.
Good morning,
excuse me, sir. Sir, you are not audible right now.
Okay. Now I am audible. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, you
Yes,
are audible.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, organizers, for
You're
inviting me
audible.
for this FDP. And I am very thankful to entire team of MDU for inviting me. And I must congratulate the entire department, entire team for organizing this FDP on a wonderful topic. And I was seeing the brochure, and you have covered so many important topics of computer science and the applied mathematics. So again, I hope that this conference, this FDP, will be successful. So now let me start with my topic. I will request the organizer to make me the presenter. Am I presenter? Organizers, can you hear me? Hello?
We are making. We're doing it at our end.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Make me the presenter, please. Meenakshi?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure, I am making. So you're presented now.
Okay. So I think my slides are sharing to you. Is this visible?
Slides are also clear.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. So now let me start with the topic, and my topic of today's lecture is quantum neural networks models for pattern classification. Let me start with very fundamental questions to all the FDP. All of us of the various background of computer science as well as the mathematics, and the important aspect of this applied sciences is that every time when we want to use computer science, we think about only one word, and that word is the bit. The computer will process the bit. It is a collection. It is containing the bits. We have the bytes, and the data is processed. We are obtaining the results, and the results are in the form of the bits again. Now, the important point which you may give a thought, the point is that my question is very important and genuine one also. Have you ever analyzed that the process of computation is reversible or irreversible? Let me clear the point. If you apply any operation on the AND gate, on the OR gate, you say this is the OR gate, or 0, 0 is 0, 0, 1 is 1, and so on. Now my question was that is the entire process reversible or it is irreversible? So if the process is reversible, it means that if the 0, 0 is 0, and if I reverse the thing, then I should obtain the input 0, 0. But it is not happening in conventional computer science. Now it is another issue which we have to think. If we are trying to evolve such a method or methodologies in computer science where we can make the process reversible, it is another evolution in computer science, and it opens the door for a thought that why should not I apply the quantum systems or the quantum computing. So here I am starting with the quantum neural network. So before taking a start in the quantum neural network, let me first introduce from where we have emerged the idea of quantum computing, and initially what we have and how we have changed convex from the computer science, from hard computing to soft computing, and now we have the quantum computing. So initially we have the several problem solving methods, and these methods can be defined in the three parts. The first part, you can see that this is the hard computing, conventional approach to solve the various problems, but all these problems should be solved by the deterministic models. It means to say that it will solve the problems where the solution is precise and certain. It means that whatever deterministic models we have for our simulation or for our computation are only able to handle such type of the problems where the output or outcome of the problem is certain. or the things are totally precise. The other part of the problem solving method is if we are trying to solve the problem where the outcome is uncertain, but here the uncertainty occurs due to the randomness in the nature of the problem. For solving some type of the problem, we have computation approaches, and these are the statistical approach like the probability theory, and we have so many other tools are there. Now we have a third aspect of the problem where we have the uncertainty in the outcome of the problem, but unfortunately, the nature of the problem is non-random, which is another point where we thought the real world problems are the problems where the outcome of the problem is uncertain and the nature of the problem is non-random. So now, in order to solve such type of the problems, we really use the word of soft computing, and the soft computing includes or it incorporates all the methods for solving the problems. Those are nature-inspired computing. So now we just formally define the soft computing. It is a just emerging approach in the machine learning, and it indicates that how we are able to solve the problems where the inputs are imprecise. It is containing the incompleteness. It is emerging from the conflicting resources, and the outcome of the problem or the outcome of the problem is uncertain. So according to Professor Jade, he has precisely elaborated the sentence that it is able to handle the nature of problems where we have the imprecision, uncertainty, and partial truth. And now to handle such type of the situations, we have the word soft computing, and the soft computing has the components, and these are the approximate reasoning and the search and optimization. Under the umbrella of approximate reasoning, we have the various approaches like the probabilistic reasoning, where we are using the Bayesian theorems and the others, and the fuzzy logic to handle the uncertainty of the problems where we have the non-randomness in the problem nature. To incorporate the effective search in a large search space, the soft computing emerged with the idea of neural networks and the evolutionary algorithms, and the most commonly algorithms we are using under the umbrella of evolutionary algorithm is the genetic algorithms. So now here we have the two approaches: the hard computing, it is handling the precise models, and the soft computing, it is handling the approximate models. If you further just investigate it, then the approximate model has the two parts: the approximate reasoning and the functional approximation and randomized search. Now, if you just see that whatever searching algorithms we are using in the umbrella of neural networks, they start from the random weights. So now it means that we start in a random way and try to find an optimal solution, and to minimize or to optimize our search space, we may allow to incorporate various evolutionary algorithms. So now if we integrate these approaches, it means that the integration of neural networks, the fuzzy logic, and with the derivative-free optimization techniques like the evolutionary algorithm, then it is being considered as the one method, one technique. This is being known as a soft computing technique. So, just see an example that in which way this soft computing is working for the recognition type of the problems. So here you can consider here, I have a neural network system. This is the neural character recognizer, and it has been trained with using a suitable learning algorithm for recognizing the individual English alphabets, small or capital both. And here we have a knowledge base, and that knowledge base is using the fuzzy inference system as well as the evolutionary algorithm to search the retrieval of the information from the which is related to the problem domain. Here we have the input which you can see here. This is the input D. It is the input O, and here you can see a comma. It is indicating the error, and the input G. So now if these three alphabets are presenting to my neural character recognizer, the character recognizer will recognize or identify these alphabets and produces the output that it indicates that that word may be DOG or it may be DAG. So it is confused in the second alphabet. It is either O or either A. Now, the output of this neural character recognizer is passing through the knowledge base, and that knowledge base is using the fuzzy inference system with the evolutionary algorithm, and it retrieve the domain of animal, and it find an inference, a approximate inference that the dog is no word in the animal domain, so that word should be the dog. It means that it is a way to handle the problem in the umbrella of soft computing. It is just a layout how these things are incorporated and able to handle the various problems in the recognition domain. So now you can see it is using the sensors, the NLP, the knowledge handler, machine learning. This is the inferencing and the planning. Now it is another example which I want to show you deliberately. Here you can see the two robots, the robot 1 and the robot 2, and it is being, and these robots have been trained by the neural network approach. The first robot has been trained from the walking style of a human, and that is being trained so successfully that it can not only walk, but it can also pass the obstacle. Now you can see. Now it is walking and it is also able to pass the obstacles. It is another robot which has been trained by using the machine learning approach, and it has been trained by the fish. And now you can see it can swim in a sea just like a fish. So now you can see how it is that now you can see how that machine is able to swim. It is not a fish. It is a trained machine, a robot which is able to swim in the sea. Now it is just an application area where we can elaborate such type of the soft computing techniques to make our system that it can simulate in artificial life. Now it is another application of the neural networks which is also being used with the soft computing approach. Now here you can see again my computer machine, again the neural network system is being trained for the recognition of all the English alphabets as well as the digits from 0 to 9. And now when it is being trained, now when it is seeing a bird image of a number plate of a car, and it tries to recognize what is the number of a car, and now it recognizing that it is MX29980. Now you will say it is approximately right, but it is not 100% right because that word is or 2, it is a Z. So now it is an approximate result. Every time when we try to train the neural network and when we obtain the prediction on estimate or the result from the neural network system, we cannot say that the recalling or the recognition is 100%. It's every time vary from scale to scale. Now it is another change in the computation, and we just switch from the additional programming approach to the machine learning programming approach. Now what you did in the additional programming, in the conventional programming, you have a input data, you have a deliberately made explicit computer program, and that program is fed into the computer with the data, and the computer is supposed to produce the output, isn't it? Now in a machine learning approach, what we did, we have a change. We do not have an explicit program. We have implicit functional mapping or an implicit mapping function between the input and the output, and we are presenting the input and the output as a part of our training set, and it is expected from the machine that the machine will generate a computer program which is responsible for producing such output if that input was presented. So now it is a change in the way of thinking. It is a change how we have to design the simulation and how we have to design the computation for our application. Now you can see here, it is not any explicit program. This is the output. This is the input data. So now when input and output as a past history or previous data will present, and the machine will train with the help of this data and produce or suggest or do a prediction what should be the program which is responsible for such a behavior. Now such type of the application, such type of what trends and what techniques we are supposed to use in the machine learning. Now, it is another question which has been asked so many times when we should use the machine learning approach. Obviously, the answer is that the answer is very straightforward, that the machine learning cannot be used for a simplified application or for a applications which can be solved with the other methods. It has to be used when the problem is very complex and cannot be handled by the human being, or the human is not able to solve the problem. For example, the navigating on Mars, that human expertise does not exist for this work. For recognition of the speech, now human cannot explain how the human is able to recognize the sounds of the speeches or the words. And it is also being used for the finding the implicit relationship or hidden patterns from the large amount of data which you call as the big data. So now such type of the applications are handled or should be handled with the approach of the machine learning. Now you can just see that I am just making a path that the machine learning has been introduced here because I want to just show you that which type of the problems we are going to be handling. Now, it is quite clear that the machine learning is able to handle the problem where we have a large amount of data, but the point is that computational limitation is always there. So now the requirement is to make the computational power more stronger, though it can easily execute this type of the algorithms. So now a very straightforward approach in the machine learning is that we have the input samples, we have a trained system, and we have the training algorithms, and that system will train the input data and produce an output, and it will validate or it will evaluate with the help of a testing data, and performance can be find out how much we have successfully recognizing the things or classifying the things. So we have so many approaches of learning in the machine learning platform. It is the supervised learning, it may be the unsupervised learning, it may be the semi-supervised learning, or it may be the reinforcement type of learning. So every learning algorithm has its own principle, its own theory, and its own way of working with the machine, and it is the own way to train the machine and to initialize the weights. Now, it is another layout for you to just elaborate that which type of the problems we are encountering in our real life. So now, sometimes we have the structured data, sometimes we have the unstructured data. Now you can see the difference here and here. And you can also see here we have the data which is emerging from the various social media sites, and it is very large in the amount. Now you can imagine that how much data we are emerging in a 1 minute. It is uncountable. So now to find a useful result, to make a decision by the machine by using such a huge amount of data, for these type of the applications, the sophisticated fast computation approach is required, as well as the new algorithm has to be elaborated, which is apart from the machine learning algorithms. It is an approach of a simple neural network. I think from this type of the architecture, every participants will familiar that we have the input layer, we have the hidden layers, we have the output layers, and how the weights are updating by using the stochastic gradient descent rule, and how the things are going on here, how the weights are updating, and how we are operating the training of the machine and the prediction output. Now we have three approaches in the neural networks, and we just normally use the word nowadays deep learning. The first approach was the rule-based system, second approach was the classical machine learning approach, and third approach was the deep learning. My voice is visible, audible? Organizers, my voice is...
Yes, sir, it is audible.
I think one student has written that the voice is not clear, so that's why I asked the question. Okay. Anyway, so we have the another approach. This is called the deep learning approach. Now, if we just see the first approach, this is the rule-based system approach. Here we have the input, and what we were doing in the rule-based approach, we have the hand-designed program, and this hand-designed program actually are the set of rules, and we have the methods how these rules will apply on knowledge base, and we were getting the outputs. Now we change the scenario and we have the classical machine learning approach, just like the conventional neural network approach, where we have the input. And what we were doing in a neural network, we were incorporating certain feature extraction methods, and we call them as the hand designed feature approaches. And these hand designed features extractions in the form of patterns are passing to our neural network, and we were obtaining the outputs. Now, in a deep learning approach, we have changed the things. We don't require or we don't have any hand design, any hand crafted or any hand designed feature extraction approach. We have the sample features, and we are using the involutional layers or hidden layers or in between so many layers. And these layers are itself extracting the features and presenting to the fully connected neural networks, and we are obtaining the outputs. So it is an example that how the deep learning is working here. Now you can see it is the input layer which is accepting the input pixel by pixel for this entire image. It means that there is no need to do or to apply any hand designed feature extraction approach. We are just passing this entire image in a 3D format. It is the hidden layer. It is extracting the features from this image in the form of the edges. The second hidden layer is accepting the edges and extracting the contours. And third hidden layer is accepting the contours or corners and extracting the objects. And the classification layer or the output layer is producing the output in terms of the recognition of the object. Now you can see this image is containing the car, a person, or an animal. So now it is the just advantage, or this is the strength of the deep learning approach, that how we have avoided certain reprocessing steps of the feature extraction and other things. Now, actually, it is not a single discipline. The machine learning is actually the related discipline. Now you can see on a slide that how many disciplines I have added. It includes the control theory, it includes the biological evolution, data mining, optimization, and so on and so on. Now from here, the point from where we can start our thinking process in a way, it is true that we are using the deep learning approach nowadays so frequently, and we are able to handle so many real life problems of the recognition, but the hurdle is again the computation speed. And again, the hurdle is that how to manage the input for the presentation, how the input data will present, and how many convolution layers I have to use, how many hidden layers I have to use. Or it can happen that it should not happen, it should be overtrained, and the other difficulties may encounter in this entire scenario. So now we may start thinking in a way how to overcome with these problems, and to overcome from these problems, we should start thinking from the initial point that how to reconstruct a computation approach, and the reconstruction of this computation approach in the form of the rather than the evolutionary process, I will say the reversible process, and it starts the approach of the quantum computing. So now we start from here again, that I have started my talk with the approach of soft computing. Then I introduce the approach of the machine learning, and I extend the idea with the deep learning. But every time you have seen that we don't have any process which is reversible. And whether I'm using the hard computing, soft computing, machine learning, deep learning, every learning type of learning, whatever the fundamental unit which is being used is a bit. And if the bit is used, it means that transistors are using the simple VLSI, ULSI, or the other technology are using. That it means that we have the circuits, and that electronic circuit is the fundamental part which is using for all the approaches. And that electronic components have their own limitations. So now, to overcome from all these problems, the idea of quantum computing has emerged. So now we start with the quantum computing and just try to introduce with you in a very simple way. I know that it is a quite new area, and I realize in so many lectures that people feel difficulty in understanding of the quantum computing. And reason is that because the quantum computing inspires from the quantum mechanics of the physics. But I will not go in that part. I will try to make it very simplified that you could understand it. So now you can simply start by saying that the quantum computing is a new model of computing which is based on the quantum mechanics. The two types of the mechanics works. One is the classical mechanics, another is the quantum mechanics. The classical mechanics works for the outside world and quantum mechanics works for the internal world. It means that the quantum mechanics works for on the atomic level and the classical mechanics works on the objects. So now to elaborate the quantum computing, we require the quantum circuits, the quantum Turing machine, as we have in the Turing machine in classical computers, and it includes more powerful than conventional model of computers. So now we can just again understand a computer that uses quantum mechanical phenomena to perform operation on data through the two basic operations or the two basic devices, and these are being known as the superposition and entanglement. The two are the key aspects of every quantum computing. One aspect is the superposition of the states. I will elaborate. And second point is the entanglements of the states. It has been observed, it has been found, if the quantum state will exist, will observe, or any quantum system which will exist, it should be entangled. Without the entanglement, we cannot observe any observations, we cannot measure any observation in quantum computing. And the states of computer will not be precisely defined as a 0 or 1. It will always be present or defined with a superposition of the states. As you all know, in classical computers which works on the binary principles, it uses the voltages flowing through circuits and gates, and we have the conventional electronic gates which you all know. In a classical digital computer, we have the Moore's law that we should increase the transistors, that it will happen, and in every 18 months the circuit will obsolete and we have to use so many other things. But now you can see the quantum computing. The quantum computing does not follow that law. Conventional computer uses whether this is the I3, I7, I8, or whatever approach you have, multi-processing approach you have, of the basic nature of this computer is that it every time execute the things in a sequential fashion. So it is considered as the serial processing, one operation at a one time. A 64-bit classical computer operates in a speed which has been observed in the gigaflops, billions of floating point operations per second. But if you just see the strength of the quantum computing, a 30 quantum bit quantum computer equals the processing power of conventional computer that running at 10 teraflops. It means millions of floating point operations per second. Now you can imagine only by using the 30 quantum bits how much speed we are obtaining with respect to our classical digital computer. It is the strength of the quantum computing. As I already mentioned, what is the now requirement? The requirement is to handle the big data. We require the fast processing machines, and that fast processing machine cannot be constructed by using the classical approach. Other point, if we just find the quantum computing in a way, I already elaborate you that it uses the phenomena of quantum computation, or you can see that it is use of quantum phenomena to perform computational operation, and all the operations of quantum computing are performed at an atomic level. So now it is the big or major difference between these two computing approaches. In the conventional computer, we have the fundamental unit is bit. So you cannot say the computer is producing 0 and 1 both. You will say output is either 0 or 1, they are mutually exclusive. But in a quantum bit, which we are calling as a qubit, it may be 0 or 1 or both. It is the difference which is making the quantum computing more powerful than the classical computer. I repeat, the qubit can be 0, it can be 1, or it can be both. I have written the qubit equals to 0 and oblique or 1. It means that any quantum computer can exist at the same time on the state 0 and 1 with the equal probability. It means I cannot say precisely whether the output is 0, output is 1. I will say the output is 0 with the probability 0.5, or output is 1 with the probability 0.5. It means that computation state may be 1 or it may be 0. The representation of a quantum bit or a quantum state. The important point is that if you're using the quantum bits, then there should be the computation state, and these computation states we call as the states. Now, the state of a quantum computing can be represented as a quantum state, and it will be represented as a superposition of the states, in what makes the quantum computing fundamentally different from the conventional computing. It means that if I want to write the computation state, I have to mention it will be the state of the computer, and that state is a superposition of the quantum bits. The three models are being used in a quantum computing. One is the quantum states. I have already mentioned with you. It is a superposition of the quantum bits and a unitary transformations. It says that how we are able to transform a quantum state to another quantum state, and how we are able to measure the quantum states in a quantum computing to obtain the output. Actually, we require the output. If we are using the computation, we cannot work on the infinite or in a instabilities. There should be the stability, and that stability will be obtained from the quantum computing if we have the model of measurements. So measurement means that what will be the output of the quantum computer if such type of the unitary transformation are used, or if such type of quantum states are existing. So here we formally define the quantum bit or the qubits. Now you can just try to understand with me in a very easy way. I already told you that we will not talk about 0 or 1. I am not about an individual qubit because it cannot exist. We will talk about the state, the quantum state, and the quantum state is constructed with a superposition of the qubits. So here we have the 2 qubits, or we will say this is the 1 qubit system which may have the state 0 or 1. So I will call that qubit, as I have mentioned here by the symbol of this, it is called the cat 0. This is called the cat 1. KET, cat. KET. It is the operator name. It is a cat 0, the cat 1. So I will say it is the quantum state phi. So now the state or the quantum state phi is expressed as an alpha, the cat 0, the qubit, the beta, the constant, and a qubit or a cat 1. It is a 1 qubit system. It is not a 2 qubit system. It is a 1 qubit system where we have the superposition of the cat and 1. If you see the cat 0 and the cat 1, actually these are the computational basis. We have the vector basis, and from the infinite vector basis, we consider the computational basis, and the cat 0 and cat 1 are actually the computational basis we are using from the unit vector. Here the quantum state is a 2-dimensional complex vector, because One is the cat 0, another is the cat 1, where alpha and beta are complex coefficients specifying the probability amplitudes of corresponding state, where modulus of alpha square plus modulus of beta square is 1. It is, I have already mentioned, it is case of a unit vector. I may also express them in a form of the vector. So I will write alpha coefficient, beta coefficient, transpose, and I can express as a alpha or beta. It means that it is simply indicating to you this psi quantum state. This psi quantum state is being expressed in a vector notation. So it is indicating that psi is a computational basis or cat 0 that has the probability alpha. It is indicating that quantum state psi is in computational basis 1 with the probability beta. Now, if we extend this structure of representation of the quantum states with a 2-qubit system, so now you can see how the things will change. So here I am writing the psi. This is alpha 0, 0 cat, alpha 2, 0, 1, alpha 3 cat 1, 0, alpha 4 cat 1, 1. And I can write the vector notations as a alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, alpha 4, where alpha 1 square plus alpha 2 square, modulus of alpha 1 square, mod of alpha 2 square, mod of alpha 3 square, plus mod of alpha 4 square should be equals to 1. So it means that these are the complex vectors, and it is being represented in this way. So it is indicating that it is the probability of the psi in the computational basis 0, 0. So it is the way of expressing the quantum bits or the qubits. It is a 1-qubit system. It is a 2-qubit system. We can extend it for the 3, 4, or the n-qubit systems. So it is the representation, as I already told you, that it is the unit vector. This is the computational basis 0. It is a computational basis 1. So a 2-dimensional vector of length 1. That's why I use the word the unit vector. It is computation. If it's a state, the states are 0 and state is 1. It is the state which we call as the psi is being represented in this way, and it is the alpha and beta mod phi equals to 1. So now the difference we have in front of us, that a classical bit, the two basic states, either on or off or 0 and 1, and these are mutually exclusive. In a quantum bit, which we call as a qubit, we have the two basic states, the cat 0, the cat 1, and they are not mutually exclusive. So it is the representation of cat 0, and this is the cat 1. It is a superposition of both the states. That superposition cannot exist in the classical computer or for the classical bit. It is not continuous in nature. The important aspects of a quantum computing is the entanglement. The first part was the superposition, which I explained to you. Another part is the computation, the quantum entanglement. It says the two or more quantum states can be described in reference to one another. It means that we can use the superpositions of the two quantum states to represent the quantum entanglement. So it means that the entanglement is a non-local property that allows a set of qubits to express superposition of different binary strings. So now, generally, or in quantum computers, to express the quantum entanglement between the superpositions of the quantum states, we use the tensor product rather than the vector product. So it is the k-dimensional quantum system, which you can see that basis 1, basis 2 up to the basis k, and we can express a general state, the alpha 1, 1 up to the alpha A and the modulus of all these squares should equals to 1. So it means that the 2K dimensional system can be constructed as a tensor product of K quantum bits rather than the vector product. As I already told you, the quantum entanglement we can obtain by the superposition of the quantum state, and that superposition we can obtain with the tensor product. So now the quantum computing supports the tensor product. The people who have the idea of the deep learning, I will just take a example from the deep learning. In a deep learning, we are using the convolution layers. In convolution layer, we use the tensor flow, that the tensor of input image and tensor of the filters. So it means that we are using the convolution operator. If you just see, the convolution operator is what? It is also the tensor product of the two matrices. Here also we are using the tensor product in between the superpositions of the quantum states. So it supports the tensor product rather than the simple vector product. It is another important aspect to elaborate the difference between the classical computers and the quantum computers, that it is the integer factorization. So in a classical computer, it is quite impossible to factor large numbers which are the product of two primes of nearly equal size. But the quantum computer with 2n qubits can factor number with length of n bits. So now this is the strength. And the other thing you can see, that if you are using the quantum sparse searching, then you can just see the difference to find the name of any individual from the entire library of congresses. Then the classical computer will take 100 years and quantum computer will take only half second. So now you can imagine how much strength and how much processing power can be increased with the use of the quantum computers. Okay. Now we come to the implementation part of the quantum computer. As I already told you that we have the computation basis, which we are calling as the cat 0 or cat 1. So here the cat 0 I can represent, as I have told you, that alpha 1, alpha 2, it is the 1 0. It means the probability of finding the 0 is 1 highest, and probability of finding the 1 is 0. The cat 1 can be represented from the implementation point of view as a 0 1. It means the probability of finding the 0 is 0 and probability of finding the 1 is 1. In a 2-qubit system, I can represent 0 as the cat 0 0. This is the computation basis, and I can express at a 1 0 0 0 0. Similarly, 1 can be expressed as 0 1, 1 0 in this form, and 1 1 is in this form. So now it is actually being used for the implementation point of view. We have already expressed to you that if I'm writing the states psi equals to alpha cat 0 plus beta at 1, and I have expressed the alpha and beta in the terms of the vector notation, then it is the same thing. The other point which is required to operate on this quantum bits, and it is the unitary transformation. The unitary transformations are actually the linear transformation that preserve the vector norms. In a two-dimensional linear transformation, it also preserves in a unit circle the rotations and the reflections. So it means that all the operations, those we are using, those we are supposed to use for the quantum states, should be the unitary, or they support the linear transformations. So now it is the example that in which way we are using these unitary operations. So it is the operation number 1. This is called the bit flip. The at 0 can be flipped to at 1, and at 1 can be flipped to cat 0. And to perform such type of the operations, we have several unitary transformation, and one of the very common transformation is considered as the Hemmard transform. Now you can see that 0 can be represented in this way and 1 can be transformed in this way. I will explain you and I will show you that how we can implement in the MATLAB. The quantum fields. So now if we are using these operations or these unitary transformations, then by using these operations, we are also able to use them in the form of a quantum gates. Actually, the quantum gates are supporting the unitary transformation and they are simply applying on a quantum state to produce the another quantum state. So now you can just see from here the quantum logic gates which acts on a n qubits, and if we have the n qubits, it means that we have the 2 raised to n cross 2 raised to n unitary matrix, and you can see the operator or the unitary operator W complex, and you can W it should be equals to identity. It support that it is the reversible, right? So it is the first operation which we have. It is the H gate, the Hadamard gate. It is the unitary transformation which apply on a 1 qubits. So that is being represented with the H 1 by under root 2, 1, 1, 1 and minus 1. Right. It is the Pauli X gate. It is also being known as the NOT gate in a quantum computing. It flips the bit from 0 to 1 and 1 to 0, as I've already explained that the bit flips the state 0 is flipping to 1 and 1 is flipping to state 0. Here it is being represented as X is equals to 0, 1 and 1, 0. Another is the Pauli Y gate. It is actually map the cat 0 to complex I at 1 and the 1 is mapping to minus complex to cat 0. The matrix is being represented as y equals to 0 minus I and 0, where I is the complex number. It is the another operator which we have, the quantum operator. This is called the Z gate. It is also being known as the phase flip gate. It means that here we are changing the phase of the qubits. It is being represented as a Z 1, 0 and 0 minus 1. So now by linearity we can see how it is happening. 0 is being changed to 1 of flipping to 1 and the state 1 is flipping to 0 by using these operations. So now by linearity we can say that alpha at 0 plus beta at 1 is transformed to alpha 1 and beta 0. So now you can see how the bits have flipped. It becomes 1, it becomes 0. Now it will happen if we apply the U, where U is the unitary transformation which we have already introduced in the terms of the gates. So either I can apply the H gate, X gate, Y gate, Z gate. Now if I apply the gate on this state, now the operation will happen. Right. Now the other issue is the measurement. Here measurement has controversy. Controversy is in the form of the point that we don't have a precise measurement or an exact measurement in a quantum computing. It means that if we have to measure the state, this in basis of 0 and 1, then we will say 0 can be measured with the probability of alpha square and 1 can be measured with the probability of beta square, modulus of alpha square and modulus of beta square. It means that measurement can change. If I am measuring the 1 and if I execute it again, then it can measure the 0. So it means that measurement change the state, it becomes 0 and the other time it can become 1 because both 0 and 1 have the equal probability to appear. But if you repeat the operation of measurement, then it can happen that we can find the same outcome. So it is the situation that we have the computation basis 0, version basis 1, and it is the measurement. We have the equal chances of measuring this or measuring this. It means probability half is of the 0 and probability half for the 1. So now, if we just try to understand what exactly is the meaning of measurement, now we can understand that suppose we have the psi 0 and psi 1 be the two orthogonal 1 qubit states. So we can represent it then have a psi alpha 0 for this and alpha 1 for this. So now measuring the psi gives the psi I with the probability of alpha I modulus square. It was I have already shown for the alpha 1 and the alpha 2. So it means that it is a equivalent to mapping psi 0 and psi 1 to state 0 or 1. Okay. I just see this. Okay. Now here you can see how the measurement for the one is happening with the equal probability. Here we have the H gate for, and here we also have the H gate operation. So now if we just skip this now, the important issue is that if we cannot measure the things precisely, we can measure them partially. So we call it as the partial measurement. The example is that the two quantum bits measured first. It means that first I will measure the 0, 0 and 0, 1. And second times it will measure the third one. This is the 1, 0. It is the partial measurement that first two quantum bits will be measured first, and after that the second quantum bit will be measured. Now a common difference which can occur here is this: the classical bit can be measured completely and the quantum bit can be measured partially. In a classical bit, measurement cannot be changed, but in quantum bits that measurement can be changed. The classical bit can be copied, but the quantum bit cannot be copied. The classical bit can be erased and quantum bit cannot be erased. So now this is the point of rethinking. If the quantum bit cannot be copied, it means we don't have any threat of hacking or attacking. So it means that the quantum cryptography is more secure than our additional cryptography approaches. So now why it cannot be copied? Because one nuclear spin cannot equals to the two spin. So spin will remain one. It means the spin is either up or spin is either down. It cannot be made in two ways. It means that so now the spin cannot be copied. So now the quantum bit cannot be copied. So now the threat of attacking is less. So it is impossible. Okay. So now we just move for our other issue. It is the quantum implementation. So that is the other part of my lecture, that how we can implement all these operations of quantum computing in a MATLAB. So now the issue is that MATLAB supports the various operations of the quantum computing, but the requirement is that MATLAB should include the quantum computing function library, the QCF library in MATLAB. If you don't have the QCF library, then the quantum operations will not execute. First, try to arrange or try to install MATLAB with the facility of QCF. Okay. The QCF library extend MATLAB by adding functions to represent and visualize common quantum operation. All the operations, all these functions are available in the QCF. We have to, or we can directly use them. Now, in a MATLAB point of view, so as I have discussed with you that we have the three quantum state notations, either represent them with an integer cat, binary cat, or in a vector form. So it is a representation of a integer at 3. The 3 in the binary at I can write. I have already told you, I have already shown you how I am writing this type of the operators. So now the state is 0, 1, 1. So now this is the 3-qubit space. So now that 3 will represent in this form. I have already explained that what is the significance of this operation. So it is 0, 0, 0, 1 here. So now to implement all these issues, the MATLAB 2CF library supports me the various functions. So I am just trying to show you these functions. So for now I am just switching to the MATLAB part. It is the screen is visible. Organizer, MATLAB screen is visible or not?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
So now the first point is that I have to change my directory from here in a MATLAB. I will open here, move to the quantum. So it is the quantum MATLAB. I will select the QCF and select the folder, and now I am in a QCF. Now my all quantum operators can execute. For example, if I just
Excuse me, sir.
yes,
So your MATLAB screen is not visible.
okay, that's why I asked
In
you.
my screen, yeah.
Okay, I am just trying to make it visible. Okay. Share. Now it is okay?
Yes, no, sir.
It's visible now.
Right. So now from here you can see that I have changed my directory in a
Yes,
MATLAB.
sir. Visible.
Excuse me, visible?
It's
Visible, sir.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Now here you can see that how I have changed my directory in a MATLAB. I switched to the quantum MATLAB and I am in a folder QCF. It means my all the quantum operators, my all the quantum functions will very frequently execute in the MATLAB environment. So now if I just write here the state 1 and I am writing the decimal 2 vector. It is a function which is being supported by QCF. How I am able to express any decimal can in a vector form. So now if I am writing that I want to represent 0 in a 1 qubit system, so I will write the decimal number 0 in a 1 qubit system, so it will show me the 1 0. It is the way which I have represented. Now you can also see the operator PT for the PHI, sorry, PH1. So it will show you in this way that the 0 has the probability 1. Right. The other operator which you can express here, suppose PH2. I am writing the binary 2 vector and I am writing the 1. So it will express me as a 0 1. So now it was the way, if you remember my slides of the PowerPoint when I was discussing with you the representation or the notation of the qubits. So I have mentioned the vector notations, how the 0 is being expressed, how the 1 is being expressed. So now you can see here that 0 is expressed in this way and 1 is expressed in this way in a 1 qubit system. So now if you just write again operator PRETTY, so you will see that it will be showing to you that 1 1. It means that the computation basis the at 1 has the probability 1. Right? Okay. Now, if I just extend the idea and use a 3 qubit system, so I can express a state Chi1 of C1. This is the decimal 2 vector, and I am representing the decimal 5 in a 3 qubit system. So I will write the decimal 5 and 3. So it will show me the 5 in this way. Understand? Now you can see this is the different from your the conventional computer science way of writing the decimal 5 in a 3 bits. It is the decimal 5 in a 3 qubit system. If I write C2, the suppose binary 2 vector, and I am writing the 3 means 1 1. So it will show me in this way. Right? Okay, so if I write E2 is decimal 2 vector, the 3 in the 3 qubit, now you can see here it showed me in this way, and in the 3 qubit system it will show me in this way. So now you can see how the 3 is being represented and how the 5 has been represented. Now I just write a state. State means the superposition of these two, C1 and the C2. So I will write the state as I1 of I equals to 1 by square root of 5, the equal probability of both C1 plus 1 by the square root of 5 into C2. So now you can just see here how I have mentioned the state. It is the superposition of the state. Now the 3 and 5 both has the probability 0.4472 to measure. Now I have the C1 was the in a 3 qubit system for the 5, and C2 is representing the 3 of decimal or cat3 in a 3 qubit. So now if I'm writing the superposition of the state, I will write the square root of 5 into C1 and plus 1 by square root of 5 into C2. Now you can see that state is this. It is the 3, this is the 5. Now you can see this is the 3. This is the 5, C1, and this is the 3 is C2, and my state is this. So now I have the probability 0.44 for the C1, and I have the probability of 0.44 for the 5. Right? I can just show you PRETTY PT I by 1. So now you can see that how the 3 is being expressed and how the 5 is being expressed in the terms of the superposition of the states. Now it is a wonderful thing that I can measure the 5 with the probability of 0.44. I can measure the 3 with the probability of 0.44. Is it okay? Now I execute them again. Okay. Now, if I have the condition of the my state is 3 is 0.89 and 5 is 0.44, and now I want to measure it. So I will write operator measure. Suppose I1 is measure is an operator, and measure will work only when your state is normalized. Otherwise, the measure operator will not work. This is the PHI, and now you can see it is measuring the 3. Now it is the measuring the 3 means the 3 is being measured among the state 5 and 3. 3 has the probability of 0.89 and 5 is the probability of 0.44. So now this state is being measured into the quantum state 3. So now if you have the superposition position of the two states 3 and 5, and that and if you apply the operator measure, now it measures the state 3, it is being settled down on the state 3 here. Okay. Now, as in another way, we can also have the some extension of the idea. If we have the state is, suppose, okay, I start from here. Right. So I have the states C1, C2. I am expressing with these two operations. So again, I have the results same, and now I have the operator H. Now, if I am expressing it again, operator P and PHI. So it will show me in this way. This is the state 0, 1 for this, and state 1, 0, 1 for state for this. Now I have the operators, and I already told you that we have the unitary operators. Now H gate, X gate, Y gate, and the AND gate. Now we are showing you that how we can use this H gate and the other gates, and how we are applying the states on these gates, and how we are able to obtain the other state. Okay. So now my first operator is the H gate. So now actually the H gate is already being included in a MATLAB, and it is being considered as the, if I write the
Excuse me, sir.
yes.
So we are running short of time and it's time for queries.
Okay.
I
So,
may request
I
you to
will
wind.
take only 2 minutes more. Right.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
We have already mentioned that we have the operator Hadamard. This is the inbuilt operator in a QCF, and if you write the Hadamard of the order 2 to now, it will already show you that it is the Hadamard of the 2 qubit. And Hadamard of the 1 qubit, you can write this in this way. So now, if I apply this Hadamard, for example, I have a state is there. The state I have already mentioned to you. Okay, this is the state. If I apply it on a C1 into PHI, so now I am applying this state I on the Hadamard. Even I can find the operation. Okay, if I apply it, that C1 into PHI. So now I can, I applied this H gate with the state, and I am obtaining the other state. So now it is the way that we are able to apply the quantum gates or the quantum operators on the quantum states, and we are able to find the other state. So now in this way, we can obtain our result. And if I apply the measure here on the C1 into 5, so I can find that the state will be obtained is the 0, 0, 0. It means that it will obtain the state 3. So measurement is the 3. Right. So it is a way that we can use it. So now I have discussed enough with you to introduce the quantum computing, and I have also shown you various operations of the quantum computing or with the MATLAB, and represent the results also. Now it is the time of query. You may ask the questions.
So now, dear participants, the session is open for your queries and doubt clearances. You can either unmute yourself and ask the questions directly, or you can write in the chat box. We are waiting for your queries now.
Any
I
queries?
hope there is no queries. So let us move forward. Professor Manu Pratap sir. Thanks, sir. The session was really a session full of learning. Rather, I should say deep learning and machine learning. The session was truly worthy, sir. So told you about machine learning, deep learning, different types of learning algorithms like supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, and reinforcement learning. Sir, you told us about structured and unstructured data visualization. We also learned about quantum bit, quantum computing, and how it is better than classical computing. Sir, you made the session more fruitful and practical by imparting knowledge about quantum computing functions like binary to vector, decimal to vector, and their further uses in MATLAB. Sir, you truly made this session full of knowledge for us. Your deep and intellectual way of imparting knowledge has added to the glory of this faculty development program. It was a really informative session in the true sense. I'm pretty sure that the precious knowledge imparted by you will be helpful to us in our future research work. So one more point in an informal way I want to add on is this: you are my super guru. I have completed my PhD under the noble and able guidance of Professor Sumit Gill. So thanks a lot, sir, once again. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
sparing
you.
your time. Thanks a lot, sir, once again.
Thank you, madam.
Okay,
Thank
sir. So here is another announcement for the participants. So dear participants, now there is tea break up to 12. 12 tak hi hai na, ma'am? Up to 12, we will join back at 12 at the same link. So thanks the participants for joining. Let us join again at the same link at 12. Before 12, 5 minutes before 11:55. So thanks. Hi. Again, one more announcement for you participants. I have shared the link for today's attendance in the chat box. You have to mark your attendance over there. Thank you.